ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they believed in an ideology of faith, right? They were following kind of a god, if you will, and that's the difference between CJNG and the cartels is it's a narco culture, it's money, it's power, right? And that's a very different kind of thing. But that would be the difference of the two that I think is super fascinating. And I think that might be also the reason why I think we could almost dismantle the cartel if we did it the right way, because it's not an ideology of belief.
The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Welcome to the show, everybody. You guys already know we got Kat here with us today, and you guys have seen her before, Bruna. She is our producer. What we're going to do today is we asked recently our social media followers and in the comments to give us any questions that they want us to answer. And so we have a list of questions that we want to address. Some of them I think would be more suited for me, some for Kat, some for both. And so we're going to let Bruna kind of mediate the whole thing, and let's get to it. Bruna, you ready?
All right. Well, like you said, Vince, we've got such good questions. We put out a call on Instagram, on X, on YouTube, and our audience has been amazing as always in providing some very thought-provoking questions. So let's just have fun and answer to the best of your ability. Obviously, we're just here to learn from each other and report based on everything that we've learned on interviews and Kat doing her dispatches. So you both are just doing an incredible job at getting information out to people about this very polarizing topic. So I first wanted to say you're both amazing, and I'm very, very blessed to work with both of you. All right, let's get started. So the first question we have here, I believe it was from someone on X. Vince, I'm going to give you this one. So what parallels do you see between the CJNG and ISIS or Al-Qaeda in terms of tactics and structure?
What has been probably one of the first things I noticed, this is way before I started doing kind of any journalism on it, was watching some of the social media pages post the torture videos that they did when they're killing like the other opposing force or people that have kind of turned their back on the cartel. And it's very similar. And I think it's online, if not matching what ISIS and Al-Qaeda were doing, from beheadings to how they were just doing their murders. And it almost felt like it was a way of matching the energy of the terrorism level. And that created a big scare and fear with a lot of people. And then using social media, I think, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they were using social media pretty early on, putting full production videos together. And CJNG is doing that as well. And then as well as they have like the military, I guess the military tactics arm of them. That's something that both of those have as well. ISIS has, they had well thought out uniforms and like digi patterns. And then now you see CJNG, they'll put their video out where they have, their gear on. So very similar. And I almost feel that they're taking a lot from the kind of the psychology of how they do it and presenting it to the world the way they do it as well. So that's what I believe.
Do you want to add anything else to that one, Kat?
No, yeah, I fully agree with that. I think that's the main parallel, is that component of psychological warfare and propaganda, where they're just using the extreme levels of violence and acts that they're committing, putting it on such a public forum to incite fear in everyone who's watching, whether they're removed from it or close to it. It doesn't matter, because it incites this, very textbook fear of this is a very extremist group, very violent. I guess the one difference is that for like CJNG in this case, they're creating this central ideology, and it's not Islam, it's the glamorization of a narco culture, and it's very scary. And so that they are exactly the same in the sense of that psychological warfare and the way that they post this propaganda so publicly. I fully agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great note, is that ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they believed in an ideology of faith, right? They were following kind of a god, if you will, and that's the difference between CJNG and the cartels is it's a narco culture, it's money, it's power, right? And that's a very different kind of thing. But that would be the difference of the two that I think is super fascinating. And I think that might be also the reason why I think we could almost dismantle the cartel if we did it the right way, because it's not an ideology of belief. Like, people aren't willing to die for it. I think if you challenge the right cartel members, they'd walk away for the right amount of money, just like, oh, that's all I needed in the first place.
Yeah,
So
because
it's an
it's not
interesting
religious extremism that's pushing them to say, you do this and you will be reunited with your God in peace and everlasting. It's completely different.
thought.
Yep. Well, great start, guys. All right. In kind of the same line, this is very, very thought provoking too. Kat, I'll throw it first to you. Is one of the questions we got is the cartel a bigger threat than China or Russia in the long term?
Okay, so China and Russia, they're obviously like state actors. They have their nuclear arsenals and they're on a global stage. But I would say that the cartels, particularly right now, CJNG, is arguably more of an immediate threat to national security due to the proximity and the amount of power they have gained without literally being a global power. I mean, how is it possible that we're even drawing these comparisons of, Russia and China and the cartels when these are two groups that literally could like walk into a United Nations building, and then you just have this group that started with rudimentary weaponry and like almost like guerrilla warfare in a way, and we recognize them as being equally, if not more, powerful and dangerous. And so also there, if we're talking about like where the threat would be, let's say like the United States or just North America as a whole, I wholeheartedly believe that the cartels are more of an immediate threat. They have managed to intercept so much intelligence in the United States, so many communities, law enforcement officials on both sides of the border. I guess on all three sides of the border, I would have to say. So I would be worried about them. And I think it's also a matter of the chemical warfare that I would call it with the fentanyl crisis that pushes them ahead of the game because, they're not threatening nuclear warfare or, tapping into people's TikToks or whatever it is. They're literally supplying an extremely deadly drug to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Americans and Canadians. And it's killing them. So whether that some people want to argue it's directly or indirectly, I would have to say with all of these factors combined, I think that the cartel is more of an immediate threat to national security.
What about you, Vince?
Yeah, it's a great point. I believe everything is accurate. I would say the only thing that I think of is how China and how powerful they are, that they're also owning land in America, their own land in Mexico. They infiltrated in many different ways, kind of like their system is kind of this long, slow process of how they totally destroy and dismantle America. And so I think China is always a big threat to me. Russia's there, right? But I don't think they're as effective as what China has been. But it's in the military, we do the same thing. What's the most immediate threat? It is Mexico, right? Within distance, and the cartel is that, and how much power they have based on the money that they're able to make.
Yeah,
which means they can manipulate anyone they want to with that kind of money. So yeah, it's a good assessment.
Oh, thank you.
All right. This next one, I'll throw it again to the both of you. So whoever wants to answer it first. What's the biggest myth Americans believe about cartels?
I'll start with this one real quick. It's something that I've been noticing through a lot of the bigger interviews we've had with the Flores twins, with several other high level people that have sat at the table with the cartel. Us as Americans, we tend to label or mislabel the term cartel. We throw it around way too easily. And the cartel themselves in Mexico don't use it so freely. If you're part of the family, if you're part of the internal workings of that cartel in Mexico, you are considered the cartel. But outside of that, everything else is a business. You are either, part of the transport business, you're part of some kind of business, or you're just a plain drug dealer in America that is using the supply that the cartel supplies them with, right? And so I think Americans have to really understand how to define these individuals. When cops arrest 3 guys with dope and all that, and they say 4 cartel members or 3 cartel members, that's a mislabeling of what a drug dealer actually is, that is supplied by in a chain of events in business. And so I think we have loosely used the term too freely, and it's made the water muddy, right? It's made it a little blurry for those to understand what a real cartel member is and the significance of that, and who are just street punks using those drugs to make money.
I think the biggest myth that I think Americans believe about the cartels is that it's all happening down south. The cartels have managed to infiltrate so much of the American economy, society, even, government officials, and now, like I've been talking about frequently, in Canada. So the fact that, the cartels are Mexico's problem, and that it's, all the south of the border, holy shit, it's completely false, and it's a misconception that's also harmful in terms of actually trying to tackle the cartels, because unless you're dismantling the cartels and their networks that run deeply throughout the US and Canada, you're never going to be able to fully dismantle a network and organization that has infiltrated all of North America and has set up shop in, the furthest cracks of Canada, a small town that run along the northern border for you guys, and allows them to keep their business up while a lot of the focus is on the southern border. So cartels are not just Mexico's problem, which is exactly why we're seeing this administration crack down on the cartels, because there has been some recognition of that. But I think that we need to take it a step further and understand that cartel propaganda runs deep in American society, that their fear-mongering is affecting Americans and Canadians, and certainly the way that they're trafficking, producing, and profiting off of drugs, arms, and people runs deep throughout the US and Canada, not just Mexico.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think things like Narcos, what is it called? The TV show that was on Netflix. I mean, we promote this stuff in almost glorified in some of the film and television, our biggest influencers, which only helps continue to grow that narco culture in a way, right? So it's not a journalistic approach. It is an approach for entertainment. And when you're
100%.
using things like an entertainment, the youth are easily impressionable. And so it becomes exciting to them. It becomes, they're drawn to it. So it's an interesting thing that's happening in our society.
And it ties back to the biggest example. I talked about it in one of the dispatches, and I actually caught some heat for it because people didn't like it. But the corridos and the narco music that's glorifying these guys. Okay, you can tell me to shut up and that you guys like the music. Yeah, some of them have great beats. Of course, it's like gangster rap, You want to talk about inciting violence against women and police? I'm all for it. It sounds great with a sick beat. But the difference here is that when you're pushing this narrative that, hey, you can be just like me, get your Scar machine gun, go shoot it up, and you can make so much bills, and you can have bad bitches beside you, you are inherently telling the public that's consuming this music that this is cool, this is glamorous, and you should be a part of it because you can be. So this is inherently affecting society, and it's across every border, because you got Peso Pluma trending in Mexico, but you've also got Peso Pluma topping the charts in America.
Hey guys, I want to give a shout out to a company I've trusted for over 11 years, First Form. They make high quality supplements, protein powders, vitamins, performance products, everything you need to support your health, fitness, and recovery. Look, my weight goes up and down like a lot of us, but when I'm dialed in and focused on my health, these are the products I trust. Their Formula 1 protein powder is my go-to after every workout. Cinnamon Toast Crunch, hands down, is my favorite flavor. I use it after every workout and it tastes amazing. They have other flavors too, like salted caramel, red velvet, and chocolate mint cookie. Not a protein shake person? No problem. Their protein bars taste like candy bars, and my favorite flavor is cookie dough. All the First Form products are made here in the US. No junk, no sketchy ingredients, no BS. Orders over $75 is shipped for free, and if you don't love it, they'll actually give you 110% of your money back. Go check out firstform.com/Borderland now.
Kat, this one I'm gonna give to you. Should Claudia Sheinbaum declare an all-out war against the cartels? In your
No.
experience in Mexico, what? Yeah, no.
Hell no. You guys, we've seen this movie before, okay? Calderon already tried that, and it started a shit show, multi-front war zone in all of Mexico, where who's dying? Not the cartels, not the bad guys. Regular, vulnerable people who are going about their daily lives are the ones that feel the impacts of this type of war. Now, there needs to be a middle ground. I'm not saying, no, let the, like, abrazos no balazos, which is what AMLO tried to do, hugs not bullets. That's also bullshit. There needs to be some sort of middle ground where you are targeting the financial pipelines of the cartels, dismantling their networks from top to bottom. So you grab the kingpin, but you get the bottom guys all the way down to the punteros who are just watching out for any military activity. And from there, you slowly start to dismantle them. It's not about going in and shooting everyone up and starting this war zone, because we see what happens. Poor people die, vulnerable people die, and those who survive lose their quality of life. And that's just not okay. So at the same time, though, we can't have this soft approach. I'm a strong proponent in buckle down and go and get the bad guy. But there needs to be some sort of strategy to this. Do I think that the approach that Claudia Sheinbaum is taking right now is the best? It's flawed, and it's really hard to say just because the bar is pretty low compared to her predecessors. So I don't even know where I would start with that. But I think that in terms of trying to shut down the border, try to go for the kingpins, it's a start. I mean, I'm not the president of Mexico, but I would probably do things different if I was. I would never be able to achieve that position. But it's a matter of cracking down with a strong arm without inciting extreme levels of violence. But declaring an all-out war, I saw that question. Someone asked it to me on my Instagram. Hell no.
All right. Vince, this is for you, man. Is CBP doing enough monitoring of its agents to check for corruption?
That's an interesting question. I would say this: every agent has a security clearance, and so you have to pass these security clearances every so often. And not just let's just say not CBP alone, just all law enforcement. It's a very similar process. But I guess this would come about because of several CBP employees who were caught with corruption, right? And which was a surprise to me, but not really, right? Because there's corruption, there's money, it's going to happen. And when I was in the Border Patrol, we had a website called something Dishonor. I'll find the name of it, but you would be able to find agents who dishonored the badge, and so it happened quite a bit, I would say. And so I guess I don't know how you would do that. I don't know how you would try to look into their lives a little bit more, because it would just kind of ruin just the freedom of that position. You know what I mean? Like, you're a law enforcement officer, you're expected to be a certain type of way. You've sworn in, and then for the government to kind of come back and not trust you so often wouldn't feel great, right? You lose a little bit of that freedom. But I think there's other things that could be done. I think they already monitor our social media. They don't check our phones, but that would be a little bit of intrusive. And then I think it really comes down to your brothers and sisters that you serve with. They have to kind of see the type of character you are, who you're hanging around with. And they would probably be the first ones to be able to identify if they see something that they feel a little shady about. And that'd probably be the biggest thing is I'd say agencies need to just kind of pay attention to their men and women who are working in the forces, and just put some checks and balances in some of the relationships that they have. So it's a tough one. I just don't want to say yes, because I don't want to I would hate to be a law enforcement officer, but then also be so you lose all your freedoms and privacy. That doesn't feel good either.
Kat, just curious, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I would love to hear Kat's view on that, because she's never been in law enforcement, so I'm curious.
Yeah.
I've never been in law enforcement, but I have heard of, CBP officers accepting Bitcoin to let stuff through for about $10,000. And I think that if you're accepting a bribe that is, I mean, for some people, 10 grand is significant, but when you have a duty to uphold and your integrity is on the line and national security is on the line, those people need to give their head a shake. Like, there are so many thousands of people relying on them for the safety of their country. And I think if you have such a big responsibility and you're looking the other way to let things through, it's a complete disregard to what your responsibility is in the role. It's interesting too, because like, you've been in law enforcement, I haven't, but I've been around a lot of people who have. And I think the reason why that, like, personally, I could never be in law enforcement is because it is such a big responsibility. And unfortunately, I just think some officers don't actually fully grasp how much, and I'm not saying everyone, like, I'm not making a generalization, and I have a lot of respect, but I just think for some people, they don't fully grasp that their job is literally to keep people safe and to ensure that national security in no way can be infiltrated by very violent criminals, money-hungry criminals. And when you see an officer take a crypto to let drugs through or to let arms through, or like people or criminals, like whatever it is, it's a slap in the face to people who are relying on them for safety. And it's really beyond me at that point, because that's the duty that you are meant to uphold. And I just don't think you should be in that role if that temptation could even cross your mind or you could even consider it. So, I mean, maybe some more psychological vetting profile or protocols to ensure that things like this don't happen. But then I don't even know, because I'm so far removed from that world, what that would even look like.
Well, everyone who gets hired goes through an extensive background investigation, but as well as a lie detector test. And the Border Patrol itself has one of the hardest extensive lie detector tests that there is across all federal agencies. So they do a really, really strict one. And not to say some people still, after that, everything get hired, they still, we've had people do stupid things. But the one interesting thing is, like, most people probably don't know, but if you're a federal employee, you're not supposed to even receive gifts of over $20, I believe, or $25.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I've been to a function where as an employee, I've shown up to a function. We did, there was like a recruiting function, and a guy gave me a hat, and I said, I can't take it. I'll buy it from you, because we're not even allowed to accept a gift like that. And you don't know who's in the prison. They call it phishing. Who's phishing for you to make one mistake and then that turn into another, and then boom, now they kind of own you completely. And I believe there's probably a space in there where that has happened to some of these agents, where the cartel was phishing them in, whether by a woman, right? They call it the honeypot, or things like that. So it's an interesting topic, and I think in the space of CBP and anyone who works in the borders, when it comes to drugs and the money, there will always be corruption, no matter how you spin it, because I think the money is so lucrative. There are people who are desperate, and they make really bad choices in desperation.
It's so interesting that you bring that up too, because when I was working in like mainstream media at newsrooms, we also weren't allowed to accept gifts over $20. So I guess we're not that different, but they, it's like, it puts a different sort of view on like the integrity of your work and the story, and also how you operate. But that I've heard about the honeypot thing, and that certainly could be for sure.
For sure.
The easiest way to make someone fail, particularly a man, is you give them a pretty girl and you ring them in, and it's game over.
Yeah. You find a man who might have challenges with connecting with women, and then you connect him with a woman. Yeah, some of those guys, they're hoping it's the love of their life, and then they find themselves in this love triangle that leads to corruption.
Yeah.
Sad. Sucks. You do that with tacos. If you give me tacos, I'll speak. I'm kidding.
And this was definitely a subject that blew up earlier this year on our show. So let's talk about it again. Vince, I'll go to you first, but I definitely want to know Kat's opinion on this too. Are there ex-US special forces working for the cartels?
So I've done a lot of deep diving on this, and I've hit my network, and my network is nothing but a bunch of pipe hitter special operations guys who've done the most. And you know, I have not been able to confirm any names still to date, not one. I can't even find someone who knows of someone who we can verify and vet, say, yeah, that's pretty legit. Not once. Now, almost on par with the way we interpret cartel, I imagine that there's a misinterpretation of the level of military experience that is misinterpreted in Mexico as well. I think anyone could go down there and kind of say, hey, I was this, I was that. Just like we have in America, we have a bunch of stolen valor guys who say they're special forces, come to find out they're not. I believe that there's some people who, light on their resume, if you will, to get certain positions. There's a legitimacy behind, look, I know most Army Rangers leave the military and go straight into contracting. That means they're paid hired guns, right? Whether it be for security or mercenary work, it doesn't matter. Obviously, we will take the money to go do the work. Now, there's a patriotism to our life that is, we stand up for the country. It's why we did it in the first place. So there has not been any proof yet. There's only been these whispers in the cartel space that no one wants to verify, but they just kind of hint at it. But there is tactics that we see that look like, oh, those are pretty well-trained tactics. I do see a hint of some kind of special operations capability there. But again, nothing of a major threat. There hasn't been something where I'm like, oh, crap, that scares me. It's more like, yeah, they've been training for a long time. They've been able to perfect their skills. They've learned the basics from someone, and they've just continued to improve it. But no actual hard evidence yet of a special operations guy besides these people who are talking about it and some of our guests who have mentioned it. But every time we dig deeper, it's only a whisper. There is no facts behind it yet. That's where I'm at.
It's interesting because I'm kind of on the same page as Vince with this, where it's hard to really verify it. But I have, in speaking with certain cartel associates and members, been told, oh yeah, the gringos taught us how to do this. Now, a lot of what I hear too, it's kind of arbitrary. And so I could come on here and be like, yeah, basically they were trained by ex-American military, and that's how they learned how to mount and operate the miniguns and like do it so efficiently. But at the end of the day, who are these guys? I don't know. And I haven't seen them. I haven't spoken with any of them specifically. So I'd want to do something like that before I would say, yeah, they're in there. Now, do I think there's certainly a high possibility? 100%. And I don't think that there would be whispers of this if there wasn't some validity to it.
Some degree of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like I said, someone could be an infantryman and from America, has gone multiple deployments, go to Mexico, and Mexican military would look at that individual as if he was Delta. They would look at him as if he was. I used to teach MMA at a gym in the border, and they called me Sarge because they heard I was in the military. They knew nothing about my military career. They just said, hey, Sarge, hey, Sarge. So my point is, like, people interpret things the way they want, and if you don't correct them, it'll kind of stay the conversation. And again, I don't see why there wouldn't be. I mean, money's money. There's going to be guys who are probably willing to do it. The Delta operator we interviewed, he said something so fascinating, but he was like, he said, I would willing to believe there would never be a Delta operator to do it. As much as that's one of the rumors is a Delta operator. He said, because they've spent their whole life serving this country and they're very patriotic to a level of I mean, they've spent careers doing it. That type of patriotism, it's really hard to turn their back on. Now, if you're talking about the 3-year, 4-year contract guy that went overseas once or twice, that guy might be willing to more take the money than anyone else because, you know, what's the next contract he's going to jump onto? So it's an interesting conversation. I hope in the next year or so we come down to the truth of it, whatever it is, because it's an interesting one. It makes the military members in our audience go nuts. And there was one Navy SEAL who said he's confirmed it, and I have not verified that yet. So we'll see.
That's fair. All right. This next question is, again, for the both of you. Speaking of a cartel with a strong paramilitary wing, the CJNG, Kat, you've done so much reporting on them, all of your dispatches. You've gone into so much depth. So I'll start with you. The question is, where do you see the CJNG in 2 years?
It's so hard to say because cartels are constantly evolving and you never know what's going to happen, especially with the states taking action against the cartels. It makes it even more complicated for me to like look 2 years in the future, because really 2 years in cartel world is a long freaking time. A lot can happen in that time. And so here's the thing, and I've said this time and time again, I truly believe that the leader of the CJNG, El Mencho, is alive. And if that's the case, and he is sick, like people say, and in hiding, if El Mencho were to actually die, whoever comes in charge next, I don't really think it's going to be this peaceful transfer of power. It could possibly be where we see some infighting, some fragmentation, and that does typically happen even if the next person in line is handpicked, because everyone wants a piece of the pie. Now, what I do see, however, is no matter what happens, CJNG will be, if it already pretty much is, the most powerful cartel in Mexico, the most expansionist cartel in Mexico, where they now have power over all 32 Mexican states. And I know some people give me shit. They're like, there's 31. No, but Mexico City is a federal district, so there's 32. So they have this extreme level of power and they want to maintain that, and they will do whatever it takes. That is why they are so violent, especially compared to other cartels. I mean, they're not going to want to end up like Los Zetas. They have seen it all. They have learned. They have been through, basically, this is like one of the newer cartels, and they've seen every possible outcome, which means they will gather and stockpile every possible tool and strategy to ensure that they don't end up like that. And the only way for that to happen would be if there was some sort of third-party intervention. I don't even mean adversarial cartels. I literally mean like government tier 1 forces that come in and try to knock them down, because truly CJNG's stronghold is second to none. And I'm not like pretext here, like I'm not a spokesperson for them. I'm not saying, oh my God, this is just literally what's happening. And they're so powerful, and their violence scares everyone across the board. They have so many officials in their pocket. They have been able to get away with so much. I mean, we look at Rancho Izaguirre as an example that made worldwide headlines, a cartel that's responsible for something like that, and there was no justice. Nobody, maybe like they arrested a plaza boss. Who gives a shit? That's still going to happen, and everything can still go on under the radar. So picturing CJNG in 2 years kind of scares the shit out of me, because I also report on them, and I can't even begin to imagine the type of stronghold they're going to have in the next 2 years, let alone like another decade.
Any thoughts, Vince?
No, I mean, it's just been interesting to watch them kind of evolve and make choices that, has put them in the position today. They're powerful. They've made really good choices in the sense of growing their brand and inciting fear on people. It's been an interesting thing to watch, like an interesting case study for cartels. The southern border doesn't just separate the United States and Mexico. It also splits political alliances, ideologies, and sometimes even families. And decisions about immigration, addressing cartel violence, and the border often dictates who will hold the most powerful positions in the world. But what if there was a resource that could cut through the background noise and give perspective from the front lines of the border crisis? I am Vince Vargas, former Army Ranger and Borstar operator, and the host of Ironclad's original podcast, Borderland. I am also the author of a groundbreaking book called Borderland that reveals the untold story of America's first line of defense and special operations of the United States Border Patrol. In the book, I give an inside look at the U.S.-Mexico border through events and life-changing experiences that I took part in during my years of service. I break down the distinct difference between border security and immigration policy through real-world scenarios and insights only available from the front lines. My goal is to counter misconceptions and misinformation about the highly volatile stretch of North America that connects the U.S. and Mexico. So head over to wherever you buy books and pick up a copy today.
All right, I'm going to pivot a little bit, going into a couple questions we got on our YouTube channel. So this one can, both of you decide who wants to answer this one first. So the question is, what's your opinion on the government saying that these cartels are the worst of the worst, but the moment a leader gets sent to the US, they're open to negotiating with them and getting benefits for them and their families, like visas and new identities, even though these bosses and their families are all the ones who benefit the most from drug trafficking?
Yeah.
It's the way the law enforcement structure has done it for so long, is they will make a plea deal for information. And so if they see that information is worth doing the plea deal, that's how it's done. And that's what I think a lot of those top dogs are looking for, that plea deal, how they're going to save their own butts. Yeah, I don't know if it's fair. I don't believe it's fair either, but it is how we have come to dismantle a lot of organizations before, and it's how we just use it still now. Go ahead, Kat.
No, I hate this. It's dead wrong. The problem with this too is it wasn't just this negotiation of a plea deal with an individual where, 17 of Chapo's family was allowed to get their visas and go into the US at the same time that the Chapitos formed an alliance with CJNG. Okay, it's one thing if you're dismantling the cartel. We see that the Sinaloa cartel is in flames. Okay, and now you want to get more information, so you make this deal. But they're still operating and going hard because they just made an alliance with CJNG. You know what the US government should do if they want to do that? Actually have everyone who worked on that, making that plea deal decision to let those family members in, send them to Sinaloa and go and slap every single person in the face that lives there and is suffering due to this cartel war. Point blank. It's a joke.
I like it.
Yep, I like it too. I like it too. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is more of a broad one. Again, either one of you can take a stab at it. We've talked about it in different ways, but it's always important to bring up. So, question is, how do we fix and stop funding cartels indirectly in the States? And how do we stop people using the border as a political talking point and get back to just keeping the border secure and Americans safe?
I'll start with that real quick. One, I think what we do really well is once we kind of find the financial institute that holds their money, we shut that down. I think that messes with a lot of things. So that's a big one. There's a lot of financial institutes that are in support of that. And so that's one. There's also a lot of financial institutes that are crooked as well. So, but the other side of it, what was the second part of the question was, the border. Man, things like this, I believe educating people on the border, the immigration laws, and everything that goes down on the border with clear, concise journalism is the best thing we can do, because we have way too much misinformation. And that is the biggest problem. Misinformation is used for propaganda. Misinformation is used for political narratives. And that has been causing a lot of division in this subject. I think we have to get to a point where we all agree that defending our borders or protecting our borders is very important for the sustainability of America, right? But for some reason, there's a lot of people in this country that don't see it that way. And so once we can get on the same page with that conversation, we can explain why we do what we do in protecting our borders and why we hopefully to sustain American beliefs and cultures for a very long time. But until then, we have a lot of people that are fighting because of these misinformation campaigns, and that is causing so much division. Even like we see today, a lot of the writing that's happening is as much as it might be a cultural belief, there's a lot of misinformation on both sides that are happening, and it just creates so much division.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. What was the first part of that question again? Because I had something to say about that.
So the first part was, how do we fix and stop funding cartels indirectly in the States? And how do we stop people from using the border as a political talking point and get back to just keeping the border secure and Americans safe?
I think Vince covered the second part of that about, depoliticizing the border, whatever, really well. And that's just like a huge thing to tackle. But in terms of the financial pipelines, I talk about this a lot. And I think, yeah, sure, like Vince said, there is somewhat of a crackdown on the dirty financial institutions that are helping to funnel and launder this money. But I think that needs to be taken a step further, which, I also go back and forth with, because I want to say, they need to crack down on the remittance apps and they need to crack down on the crypto. But at the same time, there are a lot of individuals who are not in organized crime who sort of rely on the remittance apps and on the crypto for this sort of decentralized way of banking, or just, I don't know, it becomes like a moral thing at that point. But if it means that that's what needs to be done in order to crack down and shut off the cartel's financial pipelines, it may be worth it. And I truly believe that a main part in ending and tackling the cartels is targeting the financial pipelines. So, and there's a lot of ways to do that, whether it's the financial institutions, the remittance apps, or the crypto, but it's very complicated.
Yeah, the crypto is a
Agreed.
very complicated one.
It is very complicated, and a great segue into our next question from one of our audience members on YouTube. Where's the questions on banking and laundering? So here we go. Let's do that. All of the money needs to be normalized. How is it done? Are U.S. banks involved? Crypto? Is it true Bitcoin is narco-related with large foundational investments?
Yes, great question. We just had a guest on, and I'm sure you might have seen it or you will be seeing it. But crypto is a big one that the cartels are using. Obviously, it's harder to track. The other side of it is money laundering. We did a whole episode on the ranch that did the ghost cattles and money laundering. So that bank, RoboBank, we mentioned in there, has been sued multiple times for working with and helping to launder money from the cartels. And so, yeah, American banks are involved in it. American banks are getting caught doing it as well. And I'm sure there's going to be hundreds more that there's under the radar currently at the moment. But the big thing is yeah, there's got to be money laundering involved in some capacity. The crude oil is another one that is doing money laundering. So there's a lot of different areas where they're laundering their money that they have to. And it is a biggest part of the conversation that we as a team have been trying to find more experts to kind of break that down for us.
Yeah, so the crude oil is a great example of this, because basically CJNG operatives were selling the stolen crude oil to independent American oil and gas companies. And these guys were funneling money, which ended up being clean money, directly into the cartel's bank accounts and their financial institutions, which completely allows them to take this money and use it for whatever, and none of it is flagged. This is the greatest source of power for the cartels, because without money, there's no manpower. Without men, it just goes on and on. And so the problem is, though, and I mention this time and time again, and I do catch heat for it, but I think that there needs to be a crackdown on the American side of the border to ensure that these guys can't take advantage of U.S. loopholes to make this money clean.
I agree 100%.
Pivoting to the next question from another YouTube audience member. It says, in recent years, we've seen military freefall added to SOG's capabilities. If you were king of the Border Patrol for a day, what capability or even new specialized unit would you want to see added to the agency, and why?
That's a good. I want Kat. I'm not sure if you know anything of this. So Special Operations Group.
This is yours.
I know, but I'm interested in you real quick. So Special Operations Group is the high level special operations team for the Border Patrol. They're the ones who recently caught the escaped sheriff who was running from law enforcement. They do all kinds of things. They have a capability right now of free fall, what it's mentioning, which they can just jump from high elevation undetected into to be able to do an operation somewhere in the middle of nowhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's asking, what other capabilities would you like to see for the Border Patrol if you were king for the day? Is that any kind of thought to you, someone who's more of a civilian journalist? Is there some kind of capabilities that you think would assist in the efforts of protecting our border or stopping the cartel?
That's a really tough one. And I don't really know, because I feel like there is a lot being done And they've taken it to the next level, especially over the last couple of months. And we've seen like crossings are down and like everything has just dropped. But more capabilities, I don't know, Vince. That's your border guy.
Can I throw something out there, which may or may not, but just based on previous interviews that we've had, I don't necessarily know if it's capabilities, but more people. We need more agents, especially covering the northern border. That one is just a big open gap that is impossible for the current amount of agents that are there to cover it. And they might have all the skills that they need. It's just a matter of, we need to add more.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the current Border Patrol has somewhere around 19,000 agents across America from the northern border and southern border. And it would be nice to bump them up to 25 to 30,000. But, when it comes to capabilities, I think one of the number one things that we still would say that the government has not perfected is finding tunnels. That's something that I feel is going to be a lot more in the future, because security is doing so well now, and as well as there's such big repercussions for getting apprehended, that they have to have an alternative way of transporting bodies and drugs. But another thing is, I think starting its own capability of of countering misinformation would be of huge value. Something to that effect, something that is helping. So you have PIO in all organizations, but some kind of social media team that is helping explain the truth more. I think we need to have a wing of of our government that is educating as much as possible what the legal aspects of coming across, how that would work, and as well as maybe assisting in that effort so that it deters from illegal entry. I think we have to be the conduit to showing how to do it right and making it a more streamlined process. Now, that's not a Border Patrol job. That's more of a Department of Homeland Security kind of position. But besides that, man, I think what the Border Patrol does, what CBP does, what ICE does, and I think they all have their specific job for a certain reason. And I think, other capabilities, they would probably know better than I would, but I understand the Border Patrol job more than anything. And I think they have the ability to do their job well. It's always going to be, you're always going to ask for more technology. I think that's always going to be like a force multiplier, more technology. Give me more drones, give me more cameras, give me more seismic meters, give me more dogs, give me more men, and we can continue to do the job.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they need at the northern border too, is just more technology. I mean, more people, but I don't see that happening. But if they were to amp up the technology, I think it could still make a bit of a difference, especially because the people operating at that northern border, like illegally, are not used to having anything really. So once you just put something, it will change the game for them.
Yeah, Canada is interesting because traffic goes north and south. Mm-hmm. That is like the most bonkers thing I've ever heard, because I've never worked that kind of traffic until I got up to Canada recently, and I was like, whoa, this is very strange how to work this border.
It's so crazy because someone just recently asked me on my Instagram Q&As, what are the similarities between the southern and northern border? And I'm like, nothing. They are, other than the fact that they're both borders, they're completely different. And that's why they both need different tech, different amounts of people. And it's freaking huge. It's over 5,000 miles long, and the southern border is just over 2,000 miles long. So it's more than double, and it's so open. I mean, you guys saw it in my northern border dispatch. I literally could have just walked across. Someone could have been waiting for me. It was so simple. And then we saw one CBP officer, and I was just like, well, okay, no law enforcement on the Canadian side, even though that's where all of the Canadian guns are coming from, or at least the illegal ones. They're straw buyers from the States. So you just add like a sprinkle of something, and it'll probably take effect.
Nice.
Yeah, Kat, I actually was going to throw this to you a little bit. If you could maybe speak on the same question, but for the Canadian side, anything that you would advise, the Canadian government to do if you were queen of the Canadian Border Patrol for a day?
Yeah, they should have made me the Canadian Border Czar, honestly, and the fentanyl czar, but that's not how my country works, unfortunately. So But I think that there's a lot that they could do. It sucks because they are just so down with resources and manpower. The best way for me to explain this is that they barely can deal with domestic crimes. So them trying to tackle transnational organizations is just really an outrageous notion. But if manpower is not feasible, let's get some tech over there. Let's fill it up with cameras. Let's put some, thermal sensors or some shit so that at least you know when something is going across. Why are you laughing at me? I don't know the exact verbiage.
You're right there. You're good.
Okay, thanks. And then, just some way to kind of lock it down more, because truly, and I show it in my video, it's just miles and miles of unprotected border that you can just walk across, and maybe even some way to monitor like air traffic there, because like I said, a lot of the stuff is getting across through small, like light aircrafts. And a lot of the people, especially on the Canadian side, that live near the border region are owners of light aircrafts. And a lot of it is like farmland, and it's like large residential, but like farm type living. And I think that if there was a way to monitor air traffic there, and then even just like foot traffic, people just quickly riding across to make a delivery on dirt bikes, it would make a significant difference. At the same time, though, and I have to say this because I'm Canadian, I think Canada needs to first and foremost deal with the fentanyl crisis that they have going on at home before they even take a look at the border. So imagine that. And I know a lot of our American viewers are going to be like, no, like we need to focus on us. But it's like, since I started being a journalist, I've just seen how devastating this has been for so many Canadians. Like, it was just sad, honestly. And so if the Canadian government is not even tackling the very issues that we have at home, I can't even begin to expect them to focus on the border to help protect Americans. I mean, I know that it will have this domino effect where it also protects Canadians, but I feel like majority of Canadians wouldn't even be able to agree that they feel like they're protected, let alone even worry about the border. I mean, during our recent election, economy was the number one concern, and for Americans, the border was the number one concern. So that just goes to show that there's a massive disconnect in terms of what people are worrying about in each respective country.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
I appreciate you guys.
That wraps up this Q&A. Thank you so much to both of you for your insights. And if you guys, listeners and viewers, like this, let us know. We'll do more in the future with Vince and Kat. And we always love hearing from you guys. You're never shy in the comments section, and we love it. So keep bringing it on. We're listening.
Thank you, guys.
See you later.
I'm Katarina Szulc. I'm a relentless investigative journalist who spent the last few years embedded in the heart of chaos of the world's most dangerous drug war.
Here's a dead body.
You might have heard my reporting on Borderland narcosis. Now, I'm taking you to the front lines. I've built trust on both sides, with traffickers, law enforcement, and the very people trapped in between. I'm taking you into the heart of Mexico's cartel war with fast, raw updates from the heart of the Borderlands. Subscribe now to Borderland Dispatches with me, Katarina Szulc. And don't miss my regular appearances on Borderland Narcosis with Vince Rocco Vargas on YouTube at This Is Ironclad or wherever you get your podcasts.